Welcome to the Germinate podcast, where agriculture, business, and innovation take root and thrive. I'm Joe Sampson, and with nearly 2 decades of experience in agricultural equipment and scaling businesses, I'm here to bring you actionable insights, inspiring stories, and strategic advice. Whether you're an industry veteran or just starting out, this podcast is your guide to cultivating ideas, expanding your knowledge, and growing your venture. So let's get started and germinate your path to success. Welcome, everybody. This is the Germinate podcast. So appreciate you guys coming along for the ride. Today, we got a really awesome guest in JC Hatton. JC and I have known each other for probably, I bet it's been 15, 20 years. Long time.
2008, 2009 time frame.
Yeah. So we go way back, and JC's got kind of an interesting perspective here in our industry. He's in the manufacturing representative space, and enough about me blabbing, man. Why don't you tell people your background, your story, where'd you come from, where you at now, where were you, all that good stuff.
Well, if you want the full story, there's a little nepotism involved, which has worked out well in my life. My dad did the same thing that I did. He came from a manufacturing background. Actually grew up in a little town called Attica, Indiana, which has a place called Harrison Steel, which is where a lot of my family grew up on my dad's side. And so it was very much a family-related foundry town. And so those are the kind of the roots that I came from. And then, after he went to Butler and then ended up graduating at Indiana State, he went to work for Allison Transmission, and then shortly thereafter went to work for a company in Crawfordsville, Indiana, that he ended up then going to Connecticut for a couple of years. This was in my first, second grade. I was pretty young at the time.
Sure.
And then he had gotten to know a gentleman named Dale Haase, who was a guy that he knew from his Allison Transmission GM days, because back then GM owned them. And he reached out to my dad and said, we're looking to expand metal parts portfolio of where they're at. They're up in Northbrook, Illinois. And they only had, I think, like 3 or 4 people working for the company at the time. And they wanted to expand in Indiana, and Dale thought of my dad.
So this company that you're talking about, this was a manufacturer's rep company that your dad started with what was his name?
Dale? I work for, yeah.
Okay, interesting. I got you.
It's actually owned by, or originally it was owned by Jim O'Sullivan.
Okay.
And his dad started it back in the 1930s. It was just a single. Most manufacturers rep firms are 1 or 2 people.
Sure.
Maybe as many as 4 or 5. I would say that's the general norm. But Jim kind of turned it when he took over back in the kind of early 70s. He brought on some other people and just kind of grew it and did a nice job growing it. And that's in the early 80s is when my dad came on board from the 2 years that we were in Connecticut, and then moved back to Indiana. And he handled the Indiana and grew it from there. So I got the advantage of watching him do his thing and how he worked and some of the do's and don'ts of manufacturing rep, and the fact that you have to sell as much to the people that you're selling for as you do to the customers.
Yeah.
Just, all these little nuggets I took from him.
So just to rewind back a little bit, you went to Purdue University, correct?
That's where I started out. Correct.
That's where you started out. And, everybody, well, for the most part, the people that are listening to this podcast know that JC was in the Glee Club, and you've got the voice of an angel, man. Maybe at the end of this, you'll give everybody a little taste. I think we should, but
I could probably do that.
Okay, we'll see. But anyway, to go back, you went to Purdue. At this point, your dad's working for the rep company.
Correct.
You know about it. You've seen him do his thing. Do you
Correct.
know at that point in time when you go off to Purdue, hey, I'm gonna go work for For or with my, no, you don't have any idea.
I had no clue that I would be any good at sales. I
Is that
really
right?
didn't.
Okay.
Not at all. When I was younger, I wasn't exactly comfortable in my own skin, if you know what I
Okay.
mean.
Yeah.
And just until I was about 24, I was so immature. I could not get out of my own way. Was drinking too much. I ended up flunking out of Purdue.
Okay.
But then I actually got my marketing degree from IU when I was about 25, 26.
It's funny that you say that because me and my college roommate we're still best buddies to this day. And we say we majored basically for the first 2 years in, Coors Light and doing all the wrong things.
Totally.
So yeah. Do you remember like when you were like, you know what? I'm pretty good at this. I'm pretty good at sales. I feel pretty comfortable talking to people because that's really what it's about, is just communicating and talking to people. Do you remember, like, was there a specific time? I bring that up because I kind of remember mine, but I want you to, do you have one? Or?
Mine was a lot later on. Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
Because I left college and went to work for a candy manufacturer. I was a production manager.
Did you say candy?
Yeah, candy.
Oh, candy. Okay, got
it. Chocolate manufacturer.
Okay.
And I worked for them it was a mom and pop plate shop. I learned a lot of good lessons. I mean, there was some corollary and some things that I learned. Definitely how not to treat people on a couple of things.
Yeah.
And just watching how people relate with people. But I couldn't really grow in a mom and pop place, and there was a long, kind of a funny story, but I'm not going to go into that one.
Okay.
Kind of a long, funny story on talking with my dad about whether or not I might want to try the metal parts thing, because my brothers also did it at one point.
Okay.
Tony still does the manufacturer's rep. My oldest brother, who's about 5.5 years older than I am, and then Tim did it for a period of time and found out that wasn't really his cup of tea, and then ended up going to work for he still works for Allison Transmission, where my dad originally started. So, and is doing great there. So I kind of decided that I wanted to try to do that because I didn't see much upward mobility in the candy manufacturing company I was working for. So
I was just going to say, to let everybody know, what if you were to have to describe what is a manufacturer's rep, and what differentiates you from a company guy, or either an inside or an outside or sales management, that kind of thing. What does a manufacturer's rep technically do?
A manufacturer's rep is a person or a group that will not take ownership of anything, and will act as a company's de facto sales group, outside sales.
Got it.
It doesn't mean that you can't have inside sales. In fact, personally, in my experiences with a lot of companies, the most successful relationships that I've had with both customers and with the principals, that we call the company that we sell for a principal. The most successful relationships that I've seen are the ones that have one or two inside sales guys, so that I have somewhere to go when I've got questions and need help kind of rooting through the organization and getting answers from the people I'm selling for.
That's an interesting take. You're right. It's sort of a group effort. When the sales game, we all kind of get into this mix of, it's all me or whatnot. But the reality of it is, we're better together for sure at this type of thing.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you've got an inside guy who actually is decent with people, I love to get those kinds of people. And I set up all the meetings, and maybe once a year or maybe a little longer than that, we'll get the inside sales guy to the customer, so that they can interact as well. That's incredibly helpful. And the cool thing about it, if you're comfortable doing that, some sales reps aren't comfortable having anybody at their customer except themselves. I don't look at it that way.
Right.
My job is to make them look good. My job is to make them look like the expert because I'm not.
That's super
I'm
super intelligent, JC.
I'm the
Super
jack
intelligent.
of all trades. I am know enough to be dangerous, but if you really want the best engineering and thoughts, it's going to come from them,
Yeah.
whether it be the inside sales guy or occasionally quality or engineering that they have on site.
Yeah.
And it just, you mitigate those by how good of a people person those particular people are. And that just takes a little bit of time getting to know not only the principals, but the customers and making sure that the people's communications are going to be able to be seen the right way.
Yeah, and just how you finesse that and how, how the interaction is. It could be a little bit more laid back. And as far as maybe let's not go to a boardroom and, have you have a spreadsheet and a presentation. Maybe
No,
we'll go out to lunch or something
I
like
want
that. Keep it
or
easy.
be out on the floor. Be out on
Be out on the
walking the
floor.
floor is always good.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So true. And that's super intelligent that you understand the fact that it's a group effort. And by bringing everybody together, I think it just makes, it makes you understand that relationship a little bit more, because sometimes inside guys feel like, man, I'm on an island here. And inside guys or gals, I should say, but I'm on an island here and I'm not getting any support. And you're going, I now know how to support you. And, in this or in that. And so super intelligent that you do that, man. I think that's a great idea. Wonderful idea.
There's probably only half of the companies that I sell for that have that structure.
Okay.
Most of them do not have an inside sales guy. They're small enough that they couldn't justify it. So you just have to know how to get through. There's always going to be that one guy that you depend on inside the organization that you go to get answers, to get things done, and you just have to identify who that is. A lot of times it's the chief operating officer or the president or something along that line.
Yeah.
But sometimes the owner directly. So,
well, let's talk about that. Let's talk about the as a manufacturer's rep, you're not tied to one. Obviously, you're not tied to one business. You're tied to. Is there a sweet spot? Is it 3, 4, 5? Is it 10? Is it 20? I mean, obviously, you can't get so big that you can't manage all those businesses. But how does that aspect of it work?
As a single, I mean, if you were a single manufacturer's rep, it's probably 4 or 5.
Mm-hmm.
The small advantage that you have with, there's like 12 or 13 different guys within metal parts, kind of all over the Midwest.
Sure.
Including 2 down in Texas. And the advantage of that is you can have, I think we've got 13 or 14 different companies that we sell for. I would say 5 or 6 of them are extremely active, but you've got certain ones where it's just one guy selling for them.
I see.
And they always try to have more than one when possible, but that doesn't always work out that way.
I see.
But for those major ones that we sell for, we always have 3, 4, 5 different salesmen selling for that company.
And just to give people some background too, JC and I serve on a board together, and it's called Farm Equipment Manufacturers Association, and we're on the supplier board. So clearly, when you're involved with FEMA, you're turning your agricultural mind on. But one of the advantages too of having a rep agency like you have is the diversification of products. So is that, I'm guessing that's intentional on the part of your leadership or you yourself. Talk a little bit about that. Yeah.
In fact, I can tell you the story about how I got into the farm equipment manufacturing space.
Yeah.
I was, it was what was it, 2008, 2009, and everything kind of imploded.
Right.
And I was doing some work with Agco down in Heston on forgings and a little bit of castings. And this was through a company. I do a lot of work with, they're now called Dana Lafayette, but I do a lot of work with Fairfield. It was their original name. And that's who was working with Agco. And so I got to know one of the purchasing guys at AGCO and started to get into that space. And then kind of started working with a spring company that I knew. And that's what got me really started in the ag space. So it was the diversification that I was struggling with in order to, because really when you're a manufacturer's rep, you're your own island to a certain degree. So acting like you are a company of your own and being diversified within that is huge. And a company should do that. A manufacturer's rep should do that.
Sure.
And so I really kind of wanted to get into the ag space to much more diversify myself from what I was doing at that time.
So you were in I know you're in aerospace. Are you in automotive? I
have a little bit of aerospace, very little automotive, and honestly, I don't want to get into the automotive space anymore.
Yeah, it's a tough nut. It's a tough nut to crack.
Yes,
yeah.
Very, very much. Just a lot off highway, a little bit of oil and gas.
Okay.
But for the most part, it was those major players in the off highway that I was involved with.
And that, that's a lesson that kind of everybody can learn that's maybe listening to this too is, the theme really of 2025 is how do we diversify out of agriculture? Because we all know that ag has these peaks and valleys, and the peak of agriculture and especially the ag equipment sector is fantastic. Yep. The valley, on the other hand, is tough. It makes it really, really tough for, a lot of companies, especially if that's your sole horse.
Yep.
So the diversification is what everybody's looking for right now. So, your expertise in that can kind of help some of these other companies out. Because how does your business development work? Are these long-term customers that you work with? Are they just a year-long contracts, or how does that normally work? When you land a customer in the manufacturing rep, what's the term of that agreement?
Well, I mean, the agreement's with the principal, not the customer. Typically, the customer's a long-term thing. And as long as you're continuing to call on those customers and bring in revenue and all that it typically it'll be a long-term type thing with the principal. I don't want to spend the time to call on a customer unless it's going to be a long-term relationship. It's just, if it's something short-term, it's hard to justify your time because everybody's time is so precious.
Yeah, and the point of sale or the time to get an order in our industry, especially in agriculture, is a long time. There's certain customers that took me 5, 6, 7 years to finally land a purchase order with, which is a long time. That's a long, right. That cycle is typically not the case in a lot of other industries. So that brings up a good point. You said, like, I want to sign up somebody for give me an example of a long time. Is it 10 plus years, 5 plus years?
I've had one. In fact, I just got it recently where it took me 10 years to get my first PO.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, and my dad had the same stories.
Yeah.
You just kind of keep calling, keep bugging them, and you just have to be in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
And you have to keep bugging them because it could take that long before they need you.
Yeah.
People don't. I am not a salesman that is going to sell popsicles to an Eskimo. That's not who I am.
Right.
You're going to sell something to somebody who has pain. You got to find. My job is to find their pain point.
Sure.
And to be able to have something that can solve that pain.
Yep.
After you do that, this is an easy job.
Yeah. Super clever. And to say it another way, our job is to find problems and provide solutions, really.
Exactly.
And sometimes those problems, especially in some of these maybe smaller to mid-sized manufacturers, they don't want to let people know they exist. They want to keep them swept under the rug and, but it can be glaringly obvious, especially from kind of an outsider of the company, like you would come into that company, which I think is another major plug for manufacturers rep is, I'm an outsider and I can come in and that problem is glaringly obvious.
Well, and an outsider might not get that from a purchasing guy.
Yeah.
But if I can get to the next level of an engineer,
Yeah.
that's a completely different story.
Sure.
And you got to link the two together, but that's where you start to outline what the problem might be, because you still have to go through the purchasing guide, but you don't want to do an end around. I've gotten involved in those, and that never ends well.
Talk about not so much that, but talk about how the industries maybe changed when you first started to now. Is it still purchasing guys, or are you starting to get more introduced to the engineers, or even some upper management decision type makers?
I always start with purchasing.
Still,
because yeah, absolutely. I mean, occasionally I'll get a referral to an engineer directly, but eventually he'll get me. He'll say, okay, you need to go talk to them. But generally, even if I'm reaching out to engineers, I'll make sure that the purchasing people know as well. That way, they don't feel like they're getting the end run. Because if they do feel like they're getting the end run, they will shut you down. Regardless of what engineering wants. Yeah. And I just found it's better to do it that way.
Yeah. And sometimes, it's easy for purchasing folks, especially over the course of the last 2-3 years during the COVID times, to just hit a button that says reorder, because they couldn't hit that button enough. And they didn't have time to strategically think about, why am I buying this? Is it the right quality? Is it the right price? Do I have to buy this kind of volume? Is the supplier a good supplier? Are they always on time? Those types of things I think are really going to matter again, starting right now.
And that's still the case.
Yes. Yes.
Breaking through that is probably the main issue. And that's why it's so important to be in a place when they're having trouble. Because honestly, unless they're having trouble, they're just doing that.
Yep. Just clicking that button and away they go. And it's the easy thing to do, but I think purchasing and engineering are starting to kind of, I don't know, overlap maybe a little bit. Or if they aren't, they probably should in some of these businesses. Just to think let's think strategy wise on what makes the most sense, not just what's the easiest, but what makes the most sense for the success of our business.
The smartest companies I've seen are the ones that within their purchasing, underneath them have at least some relationship with your SQEs and supplier quality and your engineering, so that it's lined up and not so much separate portfolios. Because when these two are not talking, I don't even like to be involved, because it's a nightmare.
Right.
But when there's a bit more of a line item of who they're reporting to, it can make things a little bit more streamlined.
Sure. What are some of the, to kind of change courses a little bit, but what are some of the metrics that you look at, even for yourself, not so much what your company looks at, but what are some of the numbers that you like to look at? I don't know about every day, but every week, every month, that says, you know what, JC's business is either on track or off track. Do you have those numbers that you're looking at? I mean, I'm guessing, is it number of engagements? Is it what's your commissions that month or that quarter or that year? I mean, how do you measure that?
Yeah, we get a monthly report from Metal Parts that not only shows what you did that month, but what you did that quarter, and then also year to date. So it's a monthly thing that I look at. And for each customer that I'm looking at is, what's jumping out at me? What do I need to follow up on? Sometimes it's hard to do that from an individual part number standpoint, because and that's where I have to go into it a little bit more depth, because some part numbers could be going up while others are going down within that, and I won't see that. Sure. I'm only seeing a number that's for the principal in total. So I have to dig into it a little bit more than that. But when it's something fairly easy on each particular principal / customer, I can see it pretty quick. So,
and how do you manage having 4 or 5 different companies to work with? Are you pretty strategic about it that says, okay, Mondays and half of Tuesdays is this, or how does it work? Is it a case by case, week by week?
It's definitely case by case, week by week.
Okay.
You definitely have to, trying to think how to say this. The best thing that you want to do, because time is so precious and you do have to prioritize, is to say there's a fine line between, okay, this is what my layout is for instance, I've got 6 or 7 different principals that I sell for currently.
Okay.
I would like to see these guys. I think I can go to this level with them. I think I can go to this level with them. These guys I'm probably going to be standing pat with for a while. And so in my mind, I'm thinking that way. And then I'm allotting so much time in general. Now, I don't really lay this out and say I only want to do this, but in general, in my mind, I say I want to spend that much time there. I want to spend that much time on this principle. I want to spend that much time on this principle. And then as I put my weekly, because on Friday or on Monday morning, I'm sending metal parts, what my plan is for the week,
Okay.
on who I'm visiting and what I'm working on. And so by doing that, it really does denote where my time outside of the house is going to be, and even to a certain degree, what I'm going to be working on when I am at the house.
Yeah.
So that's how I kind of break it out.
And you're a 20-year guy doing this too. So unfortunately, or fortunately,
it took a while to get there. Yeah.
Yeah.
No doubt.
I mean, you just, it sort of becomes second nature to you. Like this is the structure, because even me, as I'm transitioning into kind of a, creating my own consulting firm here, but I obviously my mind is still a company guy, and you still have to handle a large variety of customers. It's very similar to that of a rep. And, you can't give all your attention to customer A and forget about customer D, C, and G, because
you can't be everything to everybody.
No. And that's the value of a team as well. What do you think in your opinion makes for a good salesperson? Is there qualities that you look at? Have you ever talked to somebody, at the movie theater, at the gas station, at the baseball game, and you're like, man, that guy or gal would be fantastic at sales?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. There are some certain people who just innately have it. There's no doubt about that. But metal parts is full of all sorts of different people. Yeah. My brother, who has done it forever and is currently doing it as well. He got an aeronautical engineering degree from Purdue.
Wow.
He's really bright. I mean, so much smarter than me. It's not even funny.
Don't sell yourself short.
But he comes at his sales method is different. He interacts more with engineers and certainly with purchasing too. He's got the capabilities of doing that, but he sells more to the engineers than I think I do. Yeah. I do some of that, but I'm probably more of a purchasing person and just interacting with them that way. For all kinds.
Yeah, and you find out who you relate to best, and what your personality is. That's the weird part about being in sales. You're forced to look at yourself in the mirror almost every day and be like, okay, who am I? Don't change that person. I don't want to change that person. And I know you and I are we have the same worldview here, and we have our own principles and where our values lie. So you're forced to look at yourself quite often, which is a very interesting perspective about being a salesperson.
You got to be really careful with that. And the reason I say that is, I've always kind of considered myself a Zen salesman.
Tell me more about that.
It's, I'm Catholic, which doesn't really go with Zen, but
yeah.
You have to let things go the way they're going to go. You can't force it. So you can't. You can be there at the right time and do the things that you're supposed to do and put the things in place that could make that grow. But at the end of the day, somebody else is in charge. So you're either that's either gonna happen or it's not.
Yeah.
And you have to be okay with that. You can't force things in this business. And the ones that do, sometimes that kind of
They don't last.
No, exactly. And I was like, I'm not sure how to say it.
Well, yeah, you're right. They don't last because when you do figure out that surrender, that I can't do this, I can't control this. I'm trying like heck to control it. You try for it could be years. And you're like, as soon as you realize, it's gone. Boy, that's a feeling.
5 years in before I realized that. Once you figure that out, I was like, well, then everybody talks about low-hanging fruit and going after that low-hanging fruit. And once you surrender, everything's low-hanging fruit.
Yeah. Yeah. It's true. I agree. That's super clever, man. It's so true too. And those are the conversations that you and I have had in hotel lobbies, maybe way too late at night. But it helps to understand that this is a tough industry. It doesn't really matter if it's agricultural, aerospace, or oil and gas, or whatever we're talking about. There's ups and downs and peaks and valleys, and you can't get too high and you can't get too low. We've got to be the steady Eddie guys that come in and say, don't worry, I got this. Everything's going to be all right. Hold on, or let's keep our foot on the gas and go, because now is the time to go. And you got to know when to go and you got to know when to hold back. So,
and you got to hope that the guys you're selling for will follow your lead.
Yep.
Because they don't always.
Exactly.
And you got to be okay with that.
You got to be okay with it. Yeah. Well, let's talk, we're getting down to the nitty gritty here, but let's talk a little bit more about organizations that you maybe belong to. Clearly, we talked about FEMA early on. Talk about the advantage of a FEMA or any other organizations that you might be a member of. And
nobody's even close to FEMA.
Is that right? Okay.
In my mind. And I say that because I've been part of some other organizations, and most of those you're just sitting on a floor trying to sell to other people, whether it be and there are some advantages to that. You get exposure, you get this or that, but you certainly don't get I vividly remember my first FEMA and sitting in a booth in the short time that they do it, because they do things a little bit differently. Mm-hmm. And talking to the different people that went by in the booth, and then looking at a card and going, well, that's the owner. This is $1 billion company. That's the owner I just talked to. I'm not going to drop any names, but it was a bit shocking, and it showed me how different I think FEMA is than the typical organization.
That's an interesting perspective. So true as well. There's the businesses that do attend FEMA are the owners come, the major executives come. It's not them sending, a couple of people in the office just to go check the box to show up to the event. No,
and that's what usually happens at most other places.
Yeah. And you're right. That's the difference with FEMA. Why does it work, you think, best for you and your business? What do you think the advantages are for, being a member? I mean, you've clearly gotten involved with FEMA as well, which I think is important with everybody. If you're going to join an organization, you might as well get involved.
Absolutely.
But how has it helped you and, maybe your business, or maybe just you yourself personally?
Well, I mean, it goes back to two things. People want to sell things to people they like.
Yeah.
Is one. And then two, some of the places that I'm going, like I go to Kansas, I can't be there all the time. I'm from Indiana. So it's not something that I can spend a week or two every month at.
Right.
So I do try to get there so that I can also visit the customers, other people, and this and that. But for the most part, I'm going to get to see twice a year those people at the FEMA functions. And that's really huge. in a very collegial but still business attire type situation. So I mean, it's very helpful from that aspect.
So everybody all in one place. You're not driving to Canada, Kansas, wherever,
Right.
California. There's all walks of life there. So that's a good perspective too. Yeah,
That's
they're
helpful.
all in one space, and there's a lot of networking opportunities. I know we've talked about it. It would be great to see some more, and I think we're all trying to work on that. But
Yeah, definitely.
the networking opportunities that are there are huge because everybody's in one room.
And you get to know these people uh, outside, because the nice thing about farm equipment is you're doing golf, you're doing this, uh, you're doing things outside of. I mean, it's great to have the space and the time in the booth to show them what you're doing, to
Mm-hmm.
show them how you could be of advantage to them. But then also getting to spend time outside of that space and get to know people and look them in the eyes and talk to them over a drink. It's critical. It really is.
Well, and that's another reason why I think I kind of had I don't know, you can call it a calling to start this podcast. It was to give everybody in that industry more of a voice, slight of just the spring and the fall. I'm going to talk to a lot of people outside of the FEMA organization, but I'm going to talk to a lot of people inside of it.
Sure.
And we all have stories to tell. We all have, wins and losses that are good to share with like-minded people, because we just said earlier in the podcast, let's help each other out. We're all better together, whether it be an outside sales and an inside sales team, or JC and Joe talking to one another, just helping each other out to figure out the little innuendos of selling something. So hopefully that this gives it a voice, and we're going to do a bunch of these things and see how they all shake out. So
Sure.
I don't know. Yeah, that's the goal anyway, JC.
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
This has been cool. So
well, good.
I was afraid it was going to kind of plod along, but I can't believe how quick it's gone. So
I know it's weird. It's weird when you sit there and look down. You're like, oh wow. You get how some of the big podcasters out there can blab on for 3.5 hours because I feel like you and I could go down a bunch of different paths. But I want to. You've talked a lot about time today, and I think it's true. It's valuable. So let's value each other's time. But I gotta ask, man. We're at the very end of this, and here's one thing. Let me just tell a quick JC story. I don't think I've ever met anybody that doesn't like you. It's very rare. You are a very likable person, and that says a lot about you. That's just who you are. And especially when you come to some of these events and people already like you, and then you sing like an angel, and people are like, oh my gosh, JC's awesome. He's the best guy in the world. And it's true, man. You can see your passion come out. You can see how much you love to sing, how much it's part of you. And it's very rare to see that quality in some people. And talk before you sing something, you don't have to, but tell us a little bit about your singing and did you always know you were a good singer? When did that come into life?
Yeah, I actually, my mom and dad were trying to shut me up in church.
Oh, really?
Because I was singing as young as two and whatnot. I guess I didn't realize I had that good of a voice until I got a lot older.
Okay.
I knew I could hold a tune, but I I was in bands when I was younger, but I always forgot lyrics, so I hated being the lead guy.
Yep.
But I love I love harmony more than anything. Is being a backup vocal guy, which I love. So, and I still do that today. So I sing in church, and I belong to a band that we sing probably once a month or so.
Nice.
And it gets me the chance to go up and do some lead vocals from time to time, but mostly I'm doing harmony in the background.
So if I'm on your Spotify playlist or whatever music app what's coming off your list?
80s.
80s? Okay.
All 80s, man. I just love my 80s music. Absolutely.
Nice. It was funny. We were on a golf trip last week, and me and a buddy were picking our other friends up at the airport, and he had like a 80s rock on XM radio. And all these songs came up that I hated back then, but I'm like, oh, this song is freaking awesome. I hadn't heard it in 20 years. So I respect your 80s. I respect it. I'll go ahead and get along with
Most
that.
of the ones I hated back in the 80s, I still hate.
Do you? Okay. I remember one, Legs from ZZ Top. That song came on, and I'm like, I hated that song. I don't know why, but I heard it 3-4 days ago. Awesome song. I loved it. Something about it. She's got legs. She knows that.
That guitar player rocks. He's awesome.
He was good. He was good.
I think it was the Take On Me, Aha, that I still to this day hate that song.
You hate that song?
I don't know why. I just hate that song.
Who sang that song? Or who was the artist?
Aha, I think is the name. British band.
Yeah, I remember that.
They got really famous because it was a really cool video, and so MTV was just coming out. So if you had a cool video, it would do something, even if it was crap songs. So.
Yeah, and that was the theme back then. If you had a good video, nobody really cared what you sounded like. So, all right, man. Well, let's. What do you want to sing? You want to just sing a little snippet?
You want me to do a Carrie Underwood? Oh, beautiful.
Oh my God, I heard that the other day. Yes, I do. That was awesome. Go for it. Hang on. Let me.
Oh, beautiful for spacious skies, for amber waves of grain, for purple mountains' majesty, above the fruited plain. America, God shed his grace on thee, and crown thy good with brotherhood, from sea to shining sea. I started out too high.
Wow, man. There's like 10 people on earth that can sing that song. So that's beautiful, man, as always. Well, listen, I appreciate you so much. Thank you for taking this ride with me and helping me out. Like I said, you helped me out way more than hopefully I helped you out. But the goal is to be a mutual thing. So I appreciate you, man.
Love you too, buddy.
All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, JC Hatton, we appreciate you. And till next time, my friend.
See ya.
Hey, folks, thanks for tuning into the Germinate podcast. If you found value in today's episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with others in the industry. And join me next time as we continue to explore the innovations and strategies shaping the future of agriculture and business. Until then, keep growing, keep innovating, and keep germinating your success.